Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am making another build video for you today, and I thought I would use this wonderful thing known as face cam. I apologize for my appearance and the noise in the background. It's currently like 500 degrees or so in my room, Celsius or Fahrenheit. They're both pretty bad. But I thought I would come to you on your computer screens, TV screens, depending on your technology and how you view YouTube. And I thought I would provide a little build for you. Now, I was really fascinated with this idea of a tank engineer because recently they went back and they redid some of the engineer's traits to be more tanky, and they kind of are pushing engineer, or at least scrapper I should say, specifically scrapper, in a more tank-oriented setting. So I thought that I would give it a try and play around with some of the traits and just do some metas in open world and see how it works. And also discuss how it could even be really cool in a raid scenario or a fractal scenario. Hell, even PvP. So let's jump into the traits. I think first, hello person in the background. Appreciate ya. Let me first go over my gear because I think I'm okay with this gear that I have on this character, and this is what I would like to go for. A higher toughness, higher vitality character, and flat power. So I'm using a majority of Knight's gear and also Berserker gear. So emphasis on flat power and also toughness and vitality, being tanky and surviving those tough situations. With the runes, I've really wanted to go all out with superior runes of the Scrapper. However, I have engineer runes, which have toughness, but they focus on condition damage. I would rather focus on power instead of condition damage because this is a power-based build. So I have to focus a little bit more on getting superior runes of the Scrapper, just because, you know, that additional 7% reduced damage is great. So now that we have gone over the basic stats and everything, I think I will hop into the traits and see where this goes. Hopefully. Okay, so we are going into explosions, alchemy, and of course the Scrapper. For explosions, I almost said alchemy. For explosions, we're going to be taking glass cannon, big boomer, and orbital command. I'm really taking explosions for more damage because this build is more focused on surviving large hits and being a tank. I wanted to have at least one specialization line where I could focus in on that flat damage and not be useless in open world or when I'm on my own. For alchemy, I'm taking protection injection, self-regulating defenses, and iron-blooded. This is good for increased protection. This is nice to just evade attacks in that, like, oh shit scenario when you're at 25% health and you need to get out. And for iron-blooded, I do have quite the access to boons, so I wanted to have something that allowed me to reduce the damage based on the number of boons I have. So with reconstruction field, defense field, and then my elixir bee, I have a wide access of boons. And then even toss elixir bee, you do get quite the decent amount of boons. And I'll be going into my skills in a little bit. And for the Scrapper, I'll be taking recovery matrix, mass momentum, and adaptive armor. This is where I really start to focus in on my tanking capabilities as a Scrapper, as I get the most, I think, out of Scrapper in terms of its barrier application. In its recent updates, they just allowed Scrapper to apply more barrier, and it's been really fun to use. I'm using Recovery Matrix just for the flat barrier on the heel. Mass Momentum is more for increasing your personal damage in terms of gaining more might when you have stability, and with my F2 I have stability, and overall just gaining more power based on your toughness. And I have quite a bit of toughness to begin with. And Adaptive Armor is for that interval barrier application, so every 3 seconds that I am struck, I gain barrier. So it's nice. Also, I wanted to mention the minors for Scrapper because I think they're quite interesting. Decisive Renown, which is when you successfully revive an ally or finish an enemy, you grant barrier and great speed to nearby allies. So when you revive someone, burst out a barrier, and then also super speed. Which, if you happen to go for more health regeneration, rapid regeneration will be interesting with this because you're gaining that super speed and then just a lot more healing. And additionally, Impact Savant is really strong in terms of barrier application. And something that I wanted to test out more is how this would be paired with, say, a support Scourge. This just means your barriers that you receive are 15% stronger. So I'm pretty sure that means that any barrier you apply to yourself is inherently stronger, or perhaps other people applying barrier to you is stronger. I kind of like the idea that other people applying barrier to your character would be stronger, not necessarily you applying barrier to yourself. Because that does seem more of like a raid, like you're relying on more teammates. But, you know, it could just be universal to barrier. Probably is. But interesting nonetheless. So that was one thing that I was very interested with in terms of like increasing barrier strength. And I think it'd be interesting to see this on other classes, such as the Scourge. Like the barrier you apply is 10% stronger based on a certain condition or parameter, perhaps. And for my weapons, I am taking the hammer. This is your basic auto attack with your might, vulnerability, and more might and vulnerability on the final hit. Electro Whirl, which will reflect missiles, do damage, of course. Rocket Charge, which is a blast finish, or a leap, not a blast finisher. It's a combo finisher and it's a leap. So it's really nice to use this in field settings. When you are in an AoE field, that can be comboed off of, especially like Reconstruction Field into Rocket Charge for extra healing. Fourthly, we have Shock Shield, which this skill was updated to apply barrier for each hit that you manage to get on an enemy. So if you have a lot of enemies clumped up together and you use Shock Shield, you can get quite the decent amount of barrier and just build up that toughness. And Thunderclap, which is good for a stun and also damage as well. I'm going to quickly go into my tool belt skills because they're a little bit more simple. Reconstruction Field, this is just AoE protection, which is good, especially when you want to mitigate as much damage as possible. Defense Field to keep yourself sturdy with stability. Bypass Coating, which is really nice to break out of stuns, just in case you don't have stability and you get knocked down. Toss Elixir B, this is good for yourself and others because you can apply more boons to yourself if you need to, and also spread some out to your allies. And finally, for your F5, Med Pack Drop, which is good just for some AoE healing if you need it, and it's a pickup mechanic. And I think pickup mechanics for heal skills and support abilities are really interesting, which is one reason why I really like the Engineer. Going into my utilities, I'm using Medic Gyro just for more AoE healing, and it's pretty constant, and especially with barrier and its low cooldown, it's really effective. Next, I'm taking Bulwark Gyro, which I don't really use except when I tried this build and I tried to make this, and I actually had a lot of fun with it because it was like reducing your damage and everyone's, and it felt satisfying in a way. Just knowing that you're getting reduced damage is always nice. And for my final gyro, I am taking Blast Gyro Tag, which you tag a target and the gyro runs off and blows up. And it's quite nice damage in terms of a solo scenario. And if I wasn't in a solo scenario, I would probably take Shredder Gyro to do more combo finishers and to get those combos with allies. And if I'm in a heavy condition damage situation, I would probably take Purge Gyro. But in a solo situation, I think Blast Gyro Tag is probably the best. And Elixir B for more boon application. Fury, Might, Retaliation, and Swiftness, they're all great, especially in a combat scenario. And finally, I am taking Supply Quiche, or it's Supply Crate. Never mind, I thought it was cache. I've been hearing the word cache a lot, and like, just calling them quiches. So I think that's probably where it came from. But Supply Crate, which will drop a bunch of turrets and med packs, and overall make it a little easier, especially when you're soloing, and even in a group scenario. So those were all of my traits and abilities. I will now launch over into some gameplay and just talk a little bit over there. So see you all over there. Hey everyone, and welcome to the gameplay portion. This won't be too long, as I just wanted to include some gameplay so you can get a feel as to what the numbers are like, how it plays, how I play it. So let me just talk about how I actually play it. So when encountering a large group of enemies, I tend to get as close to them as possible and use my shock shield, my hammer 4. And I try to as many people as I can so I can build up that barrier. Because, you know, in PvE, you don't really know what they're going to do. They might pay your taxes. They might, you know, help you with your illness. Or they might just kill you and send you to the downstate. I'm going to take the latter. So I try to prepare as much as I can by using protection, other boons, stability, retaliation, and that also includes barrier. And one just more note on the boons, which I had mentioned previously, is that there's a trait I have which allows me to increase my overall armor based on the amount of boons that I have. So I take less damage based on the number of boons I currently have in my character. So that's pretty nice, just to reduce as much damage as possible. So when going up against champions, you know, this is of course Dragon's Den. It's a meta, so it's not super high pressured. I would have loved to get into a raiding scenario, and I kind of want to take this character in there. Sadly, that was not able to be done. So here you can see that I'm going into 4. Actually, I missed a lot of the wolves. I didn't get far enough in to hit them all. So that was a little upsetting. But one thing I will say on the 4th skill, which is the barrier, each individual tick applies a small amount of barrier. And I believe that the 4th skill on the hammer, the shock shield, hits I think 5 times, and you only apply 200 barrier per tick. Like per strike you actually hit. It's not like you press the button and you instantly get the maximum amount. You have to actually land those hits. So with that said, be very careful in terms of how you use it, and just know that that skill is how it functions. I would also just like to say that this arena seems to be taking the Scrapper into more of a tank scenario, which I love. I always thought it was a tank. I think it fit that niche really well. I would like to see it gain a taunt. I feel like if you have somewhat more of an aggressive, tanky, hey, look at me, I think it'd be really fitting if the engineer had a taunt. But in PvP, people might complain because they'd be like, oh, now they just have another access to a condition. I'm not sure if they actually have a taunt. They may or may not. I'm not sure. But to give a taunt to the Scrapper where it's a bit more easy and baked into their essential toolkit would be interesting, just to, to gain that little boost in terms of being a tank, and even to open world. I don't know, even if people have a Defiance bar, it won't necessarily hit and make them aggro you. Also, I'd like to mention that Yarmid, she spun around in her little ballerina twirl. I did not go down at all. It felt so good, and that just shows getting barrier, getting those boons, and being reactive can really help in those situations. So that was about it. That's all I wanted to say. Scrambled my brain as usual. Thank you everyone for watching. Subscribe for more content, like the video if you liked it, and comment down below about this Scrapper build, or if there's any other builds that you like me to cover. I have a bunch of ideas on builds I can do, so I'm very excited. I got my energy back. Let's get rolling, gang. I'll see y'all later. Bye everyone. Mwah.